What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at Micheal Nunn, second to none. Now, Micheal Nunn, word on the street is that he was released from prison March 10th, 2019. He was incarcerated for drug trafficking, but I don't want to remember that Micheal Nunn. I want to remember the Micheal Nunn who would hold the IBF middleweight championship strap, defeating Frank Tate. So Micheal Nunn was born April 14th, 1963 in Davenport, Iowa. He stood 6 foot 1 inch and weighed 160 to 175 pounds. He had a 77-inch reach, total bouts of 62, 58 wins, 37 KOs with 4 losses. Now he would turn amateur and he would win 3 Golden Gloves in Iowa. He would have a fighting record of 168 with 8 losses. And the issue with Micheal Nunn is the same issue that a lot of amateur fighters would have trying out for the Olympic Games. See, Micheal Nunn would try for the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. And in order for him to make that team, he would have to get through an old rival, Frank Tate, originally. He was 156 pounds, and Frank Tate was 156 pounds. But the problem was, Micheal Nunn would defeat Frank Tate 2 out of 3 times, defeating Tate the very last time of the 3 that they would face each other. And Frank Tate was a Detroit native. He was fighting out of the Kronk Gym. And Emmanuel Stu would be a trainer for those 1984 Olympic Games. So the plan was they wanted Frank Tate to represent Kronk Gym, but also the United States in those middleweight divisions. So Micheal Nunn was left having to move up to 165 pounds where Virgil Hill was. Now he couldn't defeat Virgil Hill. He was very slick, but also he was heavier than Micheal Nunn. Micheal Nunn was never comfortable at 165 pounds. So unfortunately for Micheal Nunn, he did not defeat Virgil Hill, and he did not make those Olympic Games. So in 1984, he would join the Goosen organization. Dan Goosen would recruit Micheal Nunn, and the only fighters that they would have of championship status at that time would be Rafael and Gabriel Ruelas. They were brothers. Micheal Nunn would be the only champion that they would get at that particular time after he defeated the old rival, Frank Tate. Now, Frank Tate was born August 27, 1964 in Detroit, Michigan. He was 6 foot and weighed 160 pounds, 72-inch reach. He had total bouts of 46, 41 wins, 24 KOs with 5 losses. And he would have to eventually face a New York fighter in order to get that IBF strap. That fighter's name was Micheal Elijah. Now they called Micheal Elijah the Silk. Micheal Elijah was promoted by a New York promoter by the name of Bobby Goodman. He ran Madison Square Garden at that particular time. And Micheal Elijah was getting a lot of shine in New York, and he was getting a lot of promotional and fights in Madison Square Garden. And you had a Bronx fighter by the name of Iran the Blade Barkley. Didn't like Micheal Elijah. He didn't like the shine he was getting. So he once said, "No Jerry Kill Juice head guy is going to beat me," referring to Micheal Elijah. I remember that because I was standing right there at the time when he said it. And I was at the fight, second row, when he fought him in Madison Square Garden. And when he stopped Micheal Elijah, it was amazing. We were all there. The party was thrown for Iran Barkley. But Micheal Elijah, he still kept his shine. Barkley was a little jealous because he would also defeat James the Heat Kitchen. Micheal Elijah would get an opportunity, and he would get that IBF strap. And he would eventually have to face Frank Tate, 1988. Now, Frank Tate was a very good fighter. A lot of people thought that Frank Tate would become the next Marvin Hagler. You see what happened with those belts. Marvin Hagler in 1987 would decide to relinquish his belts. He retired after losing a controversial decision to Sugar Ray Leonard. And so those belts had split up. And that lineal line was broken. So Frank Tate would face a Micheal Elijah, and he would defeat him, and he would be the new IBF middleweight championship title holder. But you had a young phenomenon coming up, man in which we're speaking, wanted to challenge Frank Tate because he knew he could beat him. He had defeated him in the amateurs 2 out of 3 times. And his name was Micheal second to none. Now, Micheal Nunn was burning through these fighters. Schoolboy Van Horn and many others. And he would eventually, like I said, defeat Frank Tate. But he had another fighter, another problem, I should say, right on his heels. And that fighter would be James Lights Out Tony. Now, I did a profile on James Lights Out Tony. Type in James Lights Out Tony, Scrapbook Boxing, and you'll learn a little bit more about him. But he was an up-and-coming young man, undefeated, and he would face Micheal second to none. And he would knock him out late in the fight. And he would become the new IBF middleweight champion of the world. Now, before losing his title to James Toney, he would have to face a veteran by the name of Sumbu Kalambe. He was the WBA middleweight champion. I was at that particular fight in the second row. Micheal Nunn came up and no one expected what was going to happen. No way. But he would throw a beautiful straight left hand. And the very first round, and he would drop Kalambe, and Kalambe didn't get up. And Micheal Nunn jumped for joy. Ray Leonard was the commentator at that time. In fact, I was not too far from where Ray Leonard was sitting. And Nunn went right over to Leonard and said, "What's happening?" And Leonard did nothing but praise him. Went back in the locker room, and he gave him all kind of praises. Because Leonard didn't want that smoke at that time with Micheal Nunn. Micheal Nunn was now feared by most of those fighters at that time. You had a young Julian Jackson coming up. He was from St. Thomas. He had his problems also. He had fought Buster Drayton and others. But he was, in all fairness to him, he was a junior middleweight at that particular time. Moving up to the middleweight division. I would have loved to have seen that contest, but a little too early in Julian Jackson's career. You would have Mike, the body snatcher McCallum. We were all looking for that matchup. Mike McCallum would eventually face James Toney on 2 different occasions. I think they might have fought 3 times, and Mike McCallum was an outstanding boxer. He was out there with me at Lenny Shaw's boxing gym in New Jersey. I used to watch him train all the time. He was a fantastic fighter. I used to watch him do road work on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn when he was a younger fighter. And he used to train in Gleason's gym, and he would do his road work on Atlantic Avenue. Nunn would take on veteran welterweight champion Donald the Cobra Curry. And he would give Donald Curry a vicious knockout in the 10th round. Donald Curry was born in Fort Worth, Texas. He stood 5'9", had a 72-inch reach. He had a record of 40 total bouts, 34 wins, 24 knockouts, 25 knockouts, with like 6 losses. And the thing with him, he would eventually lose to Terry Lawrence as well. He should have retired. But he was good welterweight. He quit on a stool. And he just didn't have the heart. He had the ability, but not the heart, was what Donald Curry's problem was. Nunn would eventually get in there with Marlon Starling. Marlon Starling was the current welterweight champion at the time. So you had the welterweight champion facing the middleweight champion. And Nunn just played with him. He was on the ropes, shaking his hips, just blocking punches. And I would go the distance, It's an HBO fight. And Micheal Nunn had to step up because he fought two welterweights. And, he had to step up, and that's when he eventually challenged, or I should say was challenged by James Toney. You had Thomas the Hitman Hearns still hanging around. I was curious to see what would have happened between Thomas Hearns and Michael second to none. Thomas Hearns had moved up as high as cruiserweight, where he would take the title away from Andrew Maynard. He would take the light heavyweight championship strap away from Virgil Hill. Virgil Hill had defeated Micheal Nunn for the Olympic Games. He would defeat the light heavyweight champion Dennis Andres a few years earlier than that. Thomas Hearns was a worthy opponent. He would lose his the WBC middleweight championship strap to Iran the Blade Barkley. But Micheal Nunn had defeated Iran the Blade Barkley. Barkley was a very strong 160-pounder. He had a 74-inch reach. He had a record of 63 total bouts, 43 wins, 27 KOs, 19 losses to end his career. He was born May 6, 1960. And everybody wanted to see what happened between Micheal Nunn and Ryan Barkley, and Micheal Nunn defeated him. This would have been the ultimate matchup, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He had all the belts, and that's how this whole thing started. When he lost to Ray Leonard in 1987, he relinquished his titles because he had retired, and all the belts got divided. And Micheal Nunn would eventually wind up with one of those belts after defeating Frank Tate, who defeated Elijah Day. So thanks to Marvin Hagler for that one. So Michael sucking Nunn, second to none. He would defeat Victor Cordoba, September 12, 1992. He would receive an NABF Super Middleweight Championship strap, and then he would defeat him to win a WBA Super Middleweight Championship title. That would be his second title. He would try out for the Light Heavyweight Championship eventually, and he would lose. But he would be involved with Don King as a promoter, and he would eventually have Angelo Dundee in his corner as a trainer. In 1994, Nunn would lose his title to Steve Little, February 26, 1994. And Nunn would eventually be incarcerated and sent to prison. 16 years on drug trafficking. And he'd be released March 10th, 2019. And it's curious to see where Micheal Nunn comes from here. And I don't know if he would ever go into the Hall of Fame or he wouldn't go to the Hall of Fame, but Micheal Nunn was some fighter. He tried eventually to fight Roy Jones, but it didn't come about. He was a slick southpaw, tall, 6'1", had a beautiful jab. But my problem with Micheal Nunn is he clowned around too much. He did it in the amateurs. Remember watching him in Lake Placid. And he just was, he liked to have fun. He liked to show his skills. He was a very skillful fighter, very fast, very good on turning on his opponent. And unfortunately for Micheal Nunn, had he taken the game a little more serious, he would have been a threat in the middleweight and the light heavyweight division. But I just wanted to go through his career. Just wanted to salute Micheal Nunn. I'm going to put him in my Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series because he deserves to be there. And like I said, there's something about that middleweight division, going all the way up from Stanley Ketchum. Different reasons for going to prison, but, the middleweight division is something else. I don't know. So I wish him the best with his career, the rest of his, his career, whether he becomes a trainer or becomes opens up a gym or something like that. But Micheal Nunn was something else. So salute to Micheal Nunn. Salute to my subscribers. Thanks for hanging in there with me. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. He was an outstanding fighter. Was Michael second to none.